Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Wednesday, November 26, 2025. Two National Guard members patrolling Washington, D.C., not far from the White House, are shot. A suspect is in custody after he, too, has been shot. We'll hear from the FBI Director Aysha Bagchi, the mayor of Washington, D.C., Muriel Bowser, and an executive assistant with the Metropolitan Police Department. Plus, Vice President JD Vance talks about it as he and his family are at Fort Campbell on the Kentucky-Tennessee border, serving an early Thanksgiving meal to U.S. troops. And Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, traveling to the Dominican Republic, says that the president has told him that 500 more National Guard troops will be deployed to Washington. Also today, a judge in Georgia dismisses the election interference criminal case against President Donald Trump and his co-defendants at the request of the prosecutor. We'll talk about it with USA Today Justice Department reporter Aysha Bagchi. Almost 24 states led by Democratic attorneys general sue the Trump administration over SNAP food aid restrictions for certain immigrants. And the latest on the U.S.-led peace plan talks to end the war between Ukraine and Russia. That and more coming up on Washington Today. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem wrote on X, "Please join me in praying for the two National Guardsmen who were just shot moments ago in Washington, D.C. Homeland Security Department is working with local law enforcement to gather more information." And later, President Donald Trump wrote on Truth Social, "The animal that shot the two National Guardsmen, with both being critically wounded and now in two separate hospitals, is also severely wounded, but regardless will pay a very steep price. God bless our National Guard and all our military and law enforcement. These are truly great people. I, as President of the United States, and everyone associated with the office of the presidency, am with you." Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat from New York, the minority leader of the House, writing on X, praying for the National Guard members wounded in this horrific shooting, thankful for the brave law enforcement officers and first responders who swiftly apprehended a suspect. There is no place for violence in America. That was from Congressman Hakeem Jeffries. There was an update from the FBI Director Aysha Bagchi where the shooting happened. You also hear from the Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser, a Democrat, and an executive assistant with the Metropolitan Police Department.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Aysha Bagchi, FBI Director. We're here to brief you on the tragic events that happened today at approximately 2:15 local time in Washington, D.C., where two of our brave members of the National Guard and the Department of War were brazenly attacked in a horrendous act of violence. They were shot. They're in critical condition. As you can see behind me, we have assembled the full force of both the federal and state and local law enforcement agencies to bring bear all of our resources to make sure we find the perpetrators responsible for this heinous act. And make no mistake, they will be brought to justice. Since this is an assault on a federal law enforcement officer, this will be treated at the federal level as an assault on a federal law enforcement officer. The FBI will lead out on that mission with our interagency partners, to include the Department of Homeland Security, Secret Service, ATF, DEA. And we're thankful for the mayor's assistance in this matter, the Metropolitan Police Department and their skills in investigating homicides and gun shootings in this city is exceptional. We will work together collaboratively because this is a matter of national security, because this is a matter of pride. President Trump has been informed. We've been in contact with the White House. We will shortchange the American public with no resources to make sure we find and safeguard our nation's capital right here in Washington, D.C., and bring anyone responsible for this heinous act of violence to justice. I would lastly like to add to the American public and the world, please send your prayers to those brave warriors who are in critical condition and their families. They are here serving our country. They are here protecting everyday Americans and citizens around the world in our nation's capital. They are the heroes of this day, and we must remember them on this day and every day, and their families and the sacrifice they have made. I will now turn it over to Chief Carroll of the Metropolitan Police Department. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Carroll. I'm the Executive Assistant Chief here at the Metropolitan Police Department. At approximately 2:15 this afternoon, members of the D.C. National Guard were on high visibility patrols in the area of 17th and I Street Northwest when a suspect came around the corner, raised his arm with a firearm, and discharged it at the National Guard members. The National Guard members, there were other members that were in the area. They were able to, after some back and forth, able to subdue the individual and bring him into custody. Within moments, members of law enforcement in the area were also able to assist and bring that individual into custody. At this time, as the director mentioned, the National Guard members are being treated at a local hospital. DC Fire and EMS responded to the scene to provide first aid for those individuals and transport them to a local hospital. The suspect in this case was also transported for treatment at a local hospital. Madam Mayor?
Thank you. I'm Muriel Bowser. I'm the mayor of Washington, D.C., and I, too, want to send my thoughts and prayers to the families of the Guardsmen and to the Guardsmen who are in critical condition in a local hospital. I am joined by members and leadership from the D.C. National Guard, from the West Virginia National Guard, United States Secret Service, Deputy Mayor Pia, Fire Chief Donnelly, and Metro's General Manager Randy Clark. And we join with the FBI Director in ensuring that MPD investigates, the U.S. Attorney prosecutes this case to the fullest extent of the law. I've had the opportunity to brief U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi, who was speaking to the president when I called, as well as the United States Attorney Pirro, who assured me that this case will have her office's complete attention.
Mayor of Washington, D.C., Democrat Muriel Bowser at a news conference on the streets of Washington after the shooting of two National Guardsmen. You also heard from the FBI Director Kash Patel and Jeffrey Carroll from the Metropolitan Police Department and Executive Assistant Chief. Vice President JD Vance spoke about the shooting while visiting U.S. troops at Fort Campbell a day before Thanksgiving.
I want to say first, before we get started, on a somber note, we had, and some of you may have seen this on your phones or on social media, but apparently there was a shooting outside the White House just a couple of hours ago. And we're still learning everything. We still don't know the motive. There's a lot that we haven't yet figured out. But what we do know is that a couple of National Guardsmen were injured in the line of duty. And first of all, I want everybody who's a person of faith to say a prayer for those two National Guardsmen, that they're able to spend Thanksgiving with their families instead of losing their lives, because I understand they're still in pretty tough condition. But I think it's a somber reminder that soldiers, whether they're active duty, reserve, or National Guard, our soldiers are the sword and the shield of the United States of America. And as a person who goes into work every single day in that building and knows that there are a lot of people who wear the uniform of the United States Army, let me just say very personally, thank them for what they're doing. We're grateful to them, and we're praying that they're going to be safe and they're going to spend Thanksgiving with their families. God bless them.
Vice President JD Vance at Fort Campbell in Kentucky and Tennessee, as he was there before Thanksgiving serving early meal to the U.S. troops. Associated Press writing that Guardsmen have been in D.C. since August. President Trump issued an emergency order that federalized the local police force and sent in National Guard troops from 8 states and the District of Columbia. The order expired a month later, but the troops remained. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth traveling to the Dominican Republic to discuss anti-drug trafficking efforts in the Caribbean area spoke to reporters after his meetings about what was happening in Washington.
Very productive meetings, but I want to start by saying after those meetings, myself and my team were notified that 2 National Guardsmen had been shot in Washington, D.C., critically wounded. The shooter shot in a cowardly, dastardly act targeting the best of America, heroes willing to serve in Washington, D.C., serve for people they don't know and they've never met because they love their country and their capital and their community. They were willing to do dangerous things others were not because they love their fellow Americans. Someone decided to turn that into targeting National Guardsmen. That will only stiffen our resolve. We will never back down. We will secure our capital. We will secure our cities. In fact, this happened just steps away from the White House. It will not stand. And that's why President Trump has asked me, and I will ask the Secretary of the Army to the National Guard, to add 500 additional troops, National Guardsmen, to Washington, D.C. This will only stiffen our resolve to ensure that we make Washington, D.C. safe and beautiful. The drop in crime has been historic. The increase in safety and security has been historic. But if criminals want to conduct things like this, violence against America's best, we will never back down. President Trump will never back down. That's why the American people elected him. America and our warriors, our National Guardsmen, are strong. And so we're following this very closely. We're getting information rapidly. I mentioned the faith of this country, the Christian faith, the prayers. I would ask for prayers for our National Guardsmen.
Excuse me, Mr. P.
Appeals to heaven for our National Guardsmen, for their families, on bended knee as a War Department, as a nation.
Excuse me.
We will never back down.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth speaking to reporters in the Dominican Republic. New York Times reporting that as this was happening in Washington, D.C. today, the White House was initially put under condition red, which signifies a potential threat to life. That level was later downgraded to orange, which indicates high risk, but not necessarily life-threatening. President Trump and other top aides were not on the White House grounds. This is Washington Today. President Trump posting on Truth Social a very long post about a Georgia judge's dismissal of a criminal case against the president and co-defendants, accusing them of trying to overturn his loss to Joe Biden in Georgia in the 2024 presidential election. The post begins, breaking news, law and justice have prevailed in the great state of Georgia as the corrupt Fani Willis witch hunt against me and other great American patriots has been dismissed in its entirety. This illegal, unconstitutional, and un-American hoax was perpetrated against our nation by Fani and her low IQ lover, Nathan Wade, at the direction of crooked Joe Biden and his handlers. This case should never have been brought in the first place. And then further down in the president's post, there's this: the deranged Democrats did all they could to viciously attack me, my supporters, and our MAGA movement for telling the truth. The 2020 election was rigged and stolen, and they committed crime after crime as they weaponized our law enforcement and justice system against honest and loving Americans. But we have fought back and won both in the courts and politically with our historic country-saving landslide victory of November 5th, 2024. Part of the very long post today from President Donald Trump. We spoke with Justice Department reporter Aysha Bagchi. The first question: why did the new prosecutor request that the case be dismissed?
The prosecutor issued basically a really long memo explaining this decision, his desire to have this case dropped. And he listed a lot of reasons, but the really central one is the fact that Donald Trump is now president of the United States. The prosecutor here said that that meant there wasn't any realistic prospect that the case would go to trial while Donald Trump is still the sitting president, which pushes the case out even being litigated further until 8 years after the alleged conduct took place. And the prosecutor didn't think that that was a good use of the state's resources. And he also didn't think that it was a good idea to keep prosecuting other co-defendants without Donald Trump when the president was really the lead defendant in this case, without whom perhaps nobody would have faced these sorts of charges related to allegations that they conspired to unlawfully overturn a presidential election. So the key deciding factor in this case was the fact that Donald Trump won the 2024 election.
There were many co-defendants. Some took pleas. What happens to them?
They are left where they're at. It doesn't seem like this decision in itself is going to affect the pleas they took, other than they had agreed to help the prosecution going forward as part of those pleas. And really, it doesn't seem like there's much for them to do since the prosecution has now been dropped. But this does spare them from kind of continuing involvement in that way in the case, and it certainly spares all the people who held out and were possibly headed to a trial in the coming months and years.
You said the prosecutor talked about the timeline in getting this to trial. How far along were things in the trial, and was there a point where the public saw any of the evidence?
This was still a really long way out from trial when it comes to Donald Trump. You know, it was such a sprawling indictment. There were 19 criminal defendants in this case. It is true that there were some criminal defendants that pushed for things to move more quickly. There was a question of having a speedy trial early in the case, but that was never going to apply to all of the defendants. So some things could have gone to trial very quickly in this case, but especially when it comes to the president, things were not going to go to trial quickly even before he won the last election. There were so many legal issues to sort out. He was arguing that he was protected as a former president of the United States. He had arguments to make about presidential immunity and all sorts of sort of these procedural jurisdictional questions that would have slowed down issues before anything went to trial. And the trial, you know, as you're kind of pointing out, it would have been this opportunity for many people to hear the evidence in this case and really hear the testimony It is true that some things have come out in other avenues. There was a criminal indictment that had all sorts of allegations. But in terms of hearing the testimony from witnesses about what actually took place in this alleged conspiracy, that was something that was still a ways out. Because this was such a sprawling case, it was never one of the criminal cases against Donald Trump that seemed likely to go to trial very quickly. And now it looks like it's never going to go to trial at all.
This new prosecutor took over for Fani Willis, and there was a whole saga involving that. How did that play into stretching this out?
Yes, that actually was a big factor in stretching out the case here. Fani Willis, she's the district attorney for Fulton County. Fulton County includes Atlanta. It was the jurisdiction that brought these charges. And it turns out that she had a romantic relationship with a special prosecutor in the case, Nathan Wade. And that really derailed things quite a long time ago at this point. One of the defendants in the case filed a motion basically saying that she shouldn't be able to keep prosecuting the case because allegedly that romantic relationship created a conflict of interest. There was concern that she had hired Nathan Wade to come onto this case, that he was getting paid. And because they had this romantic relationship, she potentially could have been getting financial benefits from her relationship with Wade while paying him to prosecute the case. And that could have created an incentive for her to go after the defendants that wasn't rooted in the law. She denied this. She actually testified when this issue came up and basically said when it came to romantic trips that she went on with Wade, she paid her part of the trip. She said she paid him back in cash sometimes, but she didn't keep records that really could prove one way or the other whether that was the case. And so that created a kind of cloud over this question of what would happen with the prosecution. Initially, a trial judge said that Fani Willis and her office could stay on the case if Nathan Wade got off the case, and he did get off the case pretty quickly after that decision. But a Georgia appeals court said, no, that's not good enough. Fani Willis herself has to get off the case, and the Georgia Supreme Court decided not to get involved in the issue. So that got litigated over a long period of time, and it really derailed things going forward. That's ultimately how this prosecutor, whose name is Peter Skandalakis, got onto the case. He is the executive director of a kind of prosecutorial council in Georgia that needed to find someone new to head the case. He said he tried to find other prosecutors who would take it, but multiple people turned him down. So he decided to take on the prosecution and ultimately make decisions going forward. He had to review the evidence in the case, and that's basically what happened over a period of time before he decided that he didn't think the case was worth prosecuting going forward.
We're talking with Aysha Bagchi from USA Today. And a final question, this was the final criminal case pending against Donald Trump. Now they're all gone. Looking back, what lessons are drawn from what has happened?
Well, my guess is lessons are going to keep being drawn for a while as people reflect further. It's true that there was one criminal conviction against Donald Trump, though it became clear, especially after he won the presidential election, that he was never going to face any jail or prison time as a result of that conviction. It's unclear if he would have anyway. But there is one conviction that's still in place. Donald Trump is appealing it, so we don't know what's going to happen there. But what are the takeaways? I mean, one question is whether these cases affected the presidential election, and if so, how? But I suspect historians, when they look back at this, one thing that they may look to is kind of the contingency of history. You don't know how things are going to unfold. If one of these cases had gone, especially one of the cases related to the 2020 presidential election had gone forward, it's unclear how that could have affected how things unfolded in the country. We have to remember that with the federal criminal charges against Donald Trump related to the 2020 election, They were once scheduled to go to trial before the 2024 election, and it was the U.S. Supreme Court that intervened and decided it wanted to weigh in about questions of presidential immunity, and that really delayed that trial from going forward. It's unclear what would have happened if that trial had gone according to schedule. So the takeaways are here that that this was really ineffective for prosecutors who may have wanted to hold Donald Trump to account, or at least have a jury weigh in whether he was guilty of the charges here. We've also seen with Donald Trump's election that his Justice Department is targeting people who investigated him. Would that have happened if these cases hadn't been pursued? It's hard to say if it would have happened at this level. It is true that during Donald Trump's first presidential term, he was seeking, he made some efforts to get the Justice Department to investigate rivals, including Hillary Clinton. So this is something that does have some precedent, even before these cases against Donald Trump were brought. But it's hard to say, how things would have unfolded differently had these cases not been brought. What is clear is that for the most part, they've fallen apart. And it'll be for historians later to look back on how events could have unfolded differently, or whether the allegations involved in these cases still preserve a type of historical record when it comes to understanding particularly what happened with the 2020 election and efforts to overturn those results.
Aysha Bagchi, Justice Department reporter for USA Today. Find her articles at usatoday.com and on X at Aysha Bagchi. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Michael.
This is Washington Today. Politico writes that Democratic attorneys general from 21 states and the District of Columbia sued the Trump administration Wednesday over guidance that they say unlawfully blocks certain groups of legal immigrants from accessing food aid. The GOP's tax and spending package, which was signed into law in July, narrows some immigrants' eligibility for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, the nation's largest anti-hunger initiative. Green card holders, however, can apply for benefits after a 5-year waiting period. In their lawsuit, state officials allege USDA issued guidance on October 31st incorrectly declaring that legal permanent residents, including those who came to the U.S. as refugees and asylum seekers, are permanently ineligible for SNAP. They're asking the judge to bar USDA from implementing the guidance. That was from Politico. California's Attorney General Rob Bonta took part in a virtual news conference with other attorneys general joining the lawsuit.
I, alongside a coalition of 21 other attorneys general, are here to announce the latest legal action that we're taking against the Trump administration. California's 48th lawsuit in 44 weeks for those tracking California. This time it's to protect food assistance for vulnerable individuals and families across our state and across the country. Today, we're filing a lawsuit challenging the U.S. Department of Agriculture's unlawful, confusing, and deeply harmful new guidance restricting eligibility for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, otherwise known as SNAP, and known in California as CalFresh. SNAP is a lifeline for 5.5 million Californians every month, for 42 million Americans every month. It helps families get groceries. It keeps children fed. It keeps people afloat during hard times. It's one of the most essential anti-hunger programs in the United States. And once again, the Trump administration is putting that lifeline at risk, and they're doing this at a moment when families are already struggling to put food on the table. Their new guidance was issued hastily, inaccurately, and without regard for the law. It misstates who's eligible for SNAP and threatens to deprive thousands of lawful permanent residents of the food benefits that Congress guaranteed to them. At best, the guidance was sloppy and uninformed, despite the high stakes involved for the states and the low-income families served by the SNAP program. Now it appears to be deliberate. We gave USDA the chance to take back the guidance, fix its mistakes, and start over with clear, correct guidance that follows the law. USDA's silence in response tells us everything we need to know. This guidance reads like someone took notes from the Grinch, taking food from families right as the holidays arrive. California will not stand by while families lose access to food because of unlawful federal action. So we are taking Trump to court.
California Attorney General Rob Bonta, a Democrat, at a virtual news conference with other Democratic state attorneys general in that lawsuit. WHTM-TV writing Americans agree on at least two things this Thanksgiving holiday: their turkey dinner and no politics at the dinner table. A national survey conducted by Emerson College Polling found that more than 75% of voters are happy with eating turkey as their main course on Thanksgiving. The same survey found that half of those surveyed hope to avoid discussing politics with friends and family at Thanksgiving dinner. 33% said they're looking forward to discussing politics, while 16% say they would not be spending the holiday with friends or family. That was from WHTM-TV. U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican of Louisiana, was on the Katie Miller podcast with his wife, Kelly, talking about the meaning of the Thanksgiving holiday.
What's Thanksgiving like at the Johnson house?
We try, well, at least until the last 2 years when I became Speaker, we really try to turn everything down and just focus on the family time and be... I think be real intentional about what it is we're thankful for and the origin of the holiday and what that means. It's a uniquely American holiday. People don't think about that, but we're blessed to be in this nation, to live under this flag and to have these freedoms and liberty and opportunity and security, and to recognize, especially on that day, we're so thankful for all that, the bountiful blessings we have, and that they're not to be assumed that we're always going to have them. You know, freedom's not inherited in the bloodstream, as Reagan said. So you got to fight for it and protect it and pass it along to the next generation. Thanksgiving's a great opportunity to do that.
House Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican from Louisiana, sitting beside his wife Kelly on the Katie Miller podcast. The cost of the Thanksgiving dinner continues to be a topic among Democrats and Republicans in Washington. Senator Patty Murray, Democrat of Washington State, posted this video.
When you head to the store before Thanksgiving, don't be surprised when your receipt comes out much more than you remember. And don't forget who we can thank for that. This year, your Thanksgiving turkey is up 40%. Canned vegetables are also up about 5% compared to last year. Yams alone are up 188%. So much for...
I will immediately bring prices down starting on day one.
And don't even get me started on Trump claiming prices are down by trying to say the Walmart dinner costs less this year. Of course it does. There's less stuff in it. That's like saying the price of eggs is down, but there's only 8 eggs in the carton. The fact of the matter is Trump does not care about lowering your prices. He cares a lot more about building some golden ballroom for his billionaire buddies. So now your family will pay the price this Thanksgiving. But here's the thing. Congress can put an end to these tariffs if Republicans join Democrats to end Trump's taxes on you.
U.S. Senator Patty Murray, Democrat from Washington State, posting that video. Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, a Republican, today in Richmond hosted the annual Thanksgiving tribute ceremony, fulfilling the 1677 Treaty of Middle Plantation, signed by England's King Charles II and Native American tribes in Virginia, which stated the tribes retain rights to their lands, receive protection from the state, and shall present a tribute instead of paying taxes. Originally beaver pelts, now a deer. Here's Governor Youngkin.
This ceremony continues to be one of our most treasured moments. A moment where we gather with citizens of the Mattaponi and the Pamunkey tribes to honor the history, the present, and our future together. We honor our history because of what it means. It's a shared history. It's a history of respect. It's a history of peace and unity. And this particular treaty stood for exactly that. Our present stands together for a time in Virginia that we have experienced extraordinary prosperity, and a future that we will continue to build together. And that's why this ceremony is so important. I believe it stands for the very spirit of Virginia, a spirit that is built on a respect for one another that reflects the clear recognition that we are all children of God. And so uniting in that spirit of togetherness, Chief Costello and Chief Brown, and to all members of the Mattaponi and Pamunkey tribes, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for recognizing the importance of this moment to renew the bonds of trust between us, renewing the bonds that underpin our treaty responsibilities and government-to-government relationship, a government-to-government relationship that is critical to our future together. We also are reaffirming the integral role of the Mattaponi and Pamunkey tribes have played in both our history, our present, and again, our future. 348 years ago, the Treaty of Middle Plantation marked a significant milestone and marked the start of a new era of cooperation and partnership. And now, 348 years later, as we humbly receive the tributes that are presented by each tribe, we again celebrate this long-standing, interwoven relationship that is at the heart of today's Virginia.
Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, Republican, at the annual Thanksgiving tribute ceremony in Richmond, Virginia. From Associated Press, a week after lifting the unprecedented flight restrictions it placed on commercial airlines during the shutdown, the Federal Aviation Administration is anticipating its busiest Thanksgiving in 15 years, with more than 360,000 flights scheduled between Monday and next Tuesday. That's more than 17.8 million people who will be screened at airports, according to the Transportation Security Administration. That was from AP. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy has for the past week been highlighting his campaign titled "The Golden Age of Travel Starts With You," which calls on passengers to dress nicer and act nicer. He spoke about it Tuesday on Blaze TV.
You have to wonder, what came first? Did people start kind of acting more like animals because they were treated more like animals? Or did the airline crews have to crack down and treat people like that because of the actions they were seeing? There was an obvious breakdown during COVID.
Yeah, I thought you were going to talk about airlines, but for a second I thought you were going to talk about the culture of podcasting. I mean, we used to wear suits and ties, and here I show up in a non-shirt and tie, no jacket, as we're talking about dressing respectfully. But no, listen, I think I don't know what came first, but you're right. When I see people travel, again, I get being comfortable. We like being, we're in an era where people don't wear suits as much anymore. They don't wear ties as much anymore. Maybe that's a bygone era to when we were younger. I still wear a suit and tie when I go to work. Some people don't even go to work, but when they do go, they dress for comfort. When they travel, they want to dress for comfort. And I get that. I want to be comfortable too. But at some point, we can't dress like we're going to bed. You know, we have our PJs on and our slippers, and, you know, we're like going to nestle in like we're going to bed. Now, actually, no, we're going out in public. And I think when we don't dress respectfully, sometimes that can lead to people not treating each other respectfully. And so, but I do think there is, as I mentioned earlier, I do think, you know, we saw COVID really progressed in the way people had to wear masks. Something happened there where I think where flight attendants had to be these enforcers on masks, and there was this confrontation, and just I think people just didn't behave as well during that time frame because I think our government didn't behave well. And then they forced our airlines not to behave well and treat travelers with respect. And I think that was the start of the slide. Maybe it was built in before, but that's when we really saw it come out. And now's the time to say, let's let that be a bygone era. Let's move to a new era where we do things differently.
Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy on Blaze TV. Later in the interview, he gave his thoughts about airline snacks.
I would love some better snacks. I would love a little healthier snack on the airplane. Maybe that could change it all. If I didn't get the really fat cookie, like fattening cookie full of just like butter and sugar and crap, or the little snack pack of pretzels that are really, like, could we do something? But I think airlines should embrace a little maha as well. Could you get a healthy choice on the airplane? That might go a long way when they come and disrupt me while I'm working on the plane.
Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy on Blaze TV on Tuesday. Congressman Frank Pallone, Democrat from New Jersey, posting on X today. In Sean Duffy's America, you will wear your three-piece suit and top hat, cram into your 17-inch wide four-figure basic economy seat, eat the $10 beef tallow-cooked pretzels, get no money back for your delayed flight, and be happy. WRC-TV News 4 in Washington writes that AAA predicts 73 million people will travel by car this holiday. but that number could jump because of the recent government shutdown. Concerns over flight cancellations caused some air travelers to switch to road trips. Gas prices are slightly lower than last year, giving travelers a small break at the pump. Train ticket sales are also expected to see an uptick in last-minute bookings. Wall Street today, the Dow up 314, S&P up 46, NASDAQ up 189. And one more item about Thanksgiving. This from CNN. If your guests at your Thanksgiving table this year are a bit moonier than usual, don't assume they ate too much turkey. And if they seem extra enthused about digging into pie after a filling meal, well, adding to late November's ever-growing list of festivities and shopping promotions, cannabis brands are now marketing Green Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving, when childhood friends reunite and presumably light up. That was from CNN. Washington Today continues in a moment.
Friday on C-SPAN's Ceasefire. At a time when finding common ground matters most in Washington, host Dasha Burns sits down with Cornel West, Union Theological Seminary professor, and Robert George, Princeton University professor, for a civil dialogue on rising political polarization in the U.S. and top issues facing the country.
Bridging the divide in American politics.
Watch Ceasefire Friday at 7 p.m. and 10 p.m. Eastern and Pacific, only on C-SPAN.
And if you miss an episode, you can find Ceasefire as a podcast at cspan.org/podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app and wherever you find your podcasts. From the Washington Post, President Donald Trump's demand that Ukraine sign a deal by Thanksgiving appears to have softened as he leaves some of the most important details of the peace plan in the hands of his envoys, one of whom was just embroiled in a high-profile phone leak. A recording of an alleged phone call between Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff and a top aide to Russian President Vladimir Putin from October appears to show the envoy advising the Russians on their negotiating strategy. That was from the Washington Post. Congressman Gregory Meeks, Democrat from New York, ranking member on the Foreign Affairs Committee, was on CNN today about the latest Russia-Ukraine peace plan and that transcript of the phone call between Steve Witkoff and Yuri Ushakov.
This seems to be more of the usual. Number one, it seems Witkoff and, well as the president, are in bed with the Russians. Everything that you see, it is not your, believe your eyes. Here and what you read as far as this transcript is concerned, that there is nothing that they are doing to stop Russia and its incursion into Ukraine. And now they're trying to this 28-point plan. Clearly, it's a plan that Russia gave to Witkoff or someone of that nature, who then tried to impose that on the Ukrainian people. There is, we got a same president. Remember the first time that he was president, he took Russian intelligence over the United States intelligence. And now there are actually, when you think about this whole negotiation, where are the diplomats? There's no diplomats that are negotiating anything. Why? Because they basically shut down the State Department, got rid of all the experts that know how to deal with negotiations, that also know how to hold Russia accountable, because there's no accountability right now that is going toward Russia. And still, just last night, Russia is bombing Ukraine, not stopping at all, even while these talks are going on. And then we threaten Ukraine about not sharing intelligence with them. The whole thing rings like something terrible is going on. And then finally, when you think about what the Trump administration is doing, he's trying to make the United States Congress to be like the Dumas, a do-nothing legislative body. That's not who we are. And then he goes after, as the other story talked about, members of Congress for saying that you should abide by the Constitution. There are warning lights signing right now against what is taking place with Mr. Witkoff and just about everybody else that is doing these negotiations.
Congressman Gregory Meeks, Democrat from New York, the ranking member on the Foreign Affairs Committee, on CNN today. Reporters asked President Donald Trump about the transcript of the Steve Witkoff and Yuri Ushakov phone call that leaked. They spoke to the president on Air Force One on Tuesday.
Have you heard this audio that Bloomberg has of Witkoff coaching the Russians on how to appeal
I haven't heard it, no, but that's a standard thing, you know, because he's got to sell this to Ukraine. He's got to sell Ukraine to Russia. That's what a deal maker does. You got to say, look, they want this. You've got to convince them with this. You know, that's a very standard form of negotiation. I haven't heard it, but I heard it was standard negotiation. And I would imagine he's saying the same thing to Ukraine, because each party has to give and take.
So you're not worried that he's too pro-Russian?
No, I think, look, this war could go on for years, and Russia's got a lot more people, got a lot more soldiers, you know. So I think if Ukraine can make a deal, it's a good thing. I think it's great for both. Frankly, I think it's great for both. But Ukraine's got it's a much smaller group of people. They've lost a lot of people. Russia's lost a lot of people, but Russia has a much bigger pool of people.
President Donald Trump speaking to reporters on Air Force One as he flew Tuesday from Washington, D.C. down to Florida. Associated Press reporting today a senior Kremlin official confirmed Wednesday that U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff is set to visit Moscow next week as efforts pick up speed to find a consensus on ending the nearly 4-year war between Russia and Ukraine. But Yuri Ushakov, Russian President Vladimir Putin's foreign affairs advisor, insisted that Kremlin officials haven't officially received the initial U.S. peace proposal, although they have acknowledged that they have seen a copy obtained through back channels. Reporting from AP. From BBC News in Great Britain, the former leader of Reform UK in Wales has been sentenced to 10.5 years in prison after admitting taking bribes for pro-Russia interviews and speeches. Nathan Gill, 52 years old, is thought to have received up to £40,000 to help pro-Russian politicians in Ukraine. He was a member of the European Parliament when he accepted the money. That was from BBC News. This was an issue during Prime Minister's Question Time in the British House of Commons today. Ed Davey, leader of the Liberal Democrats, questioning Prime Minister Keir Starmer, head of the ruling Labour Party.
I hope everyone in the House shares my alarm that a former leader of a political party in Wales has been found guilty of betraying our country and has now been sentenced to over 10 years in prison for his treachery. The Prime Minister said that Reform should hold an independent investigation, and he is right, but we both know that that's not going to happen. So given Reform won't, he must. So will he now launch a national investigation into Russian infiltration into our politics?
Yeah! Well, he's right to highlight this very serious case, a long sentence for pro-Russian bribery in the Reform Party at the highest level. You would think a leader of a political party would want to get to the bottom of that and ask the question, how on earth did that happen in the Reform Party? And what other links are there between Reform and Russia? But no, the leader of Reform doesn't want to do it because, Mr. Speaker, we know he doesn't want to know the answer to the question because Reform is riddled with pro-Putin propaganda.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer questioned by Lib Dem leader Ed Davey during Prime Minister's Question Time today in the House of Commons in London. The leader of Reform UK, a member of Parliament, Nigel Farage, was interviewed by Sky News on Tuesday about the case of Nathan Gill.
Will you instigate an investigation in your party to see if there is any other pro-Russian influence?
We are not a police force. Should there be...
You are the leader of the party, though.
Yes, and if you listen, I'll tell you what I think. I think given, we've seen the Nathan Gill case, given since then we've learnt that a Labour MP took £500,000 for his office costs and campaigning costs from a now known Chinese agent, is there a problem through British politics? There is. Is it extensive? I doubt it, but I don't know. Should we ask somebody with actual authority to investigate it? Yes.
So would you support calls then for a UK-wide investigation?
I think that's right, and I think there are doubts on all sides right at the moment. So yes, that would be a good thing to do.
But you're not going to instigate that investigation yourself as party leader. But you are party leader.
Yeah, I haven't got a police force. I haven't got access. I can't access your phone messages. I can't access your emails. Unless I can do that, I can't investigate. You've got to have somebody with investigatory powers.
What questions have you personally asked of people in your party?
Well, I've asked everybody, have you ever taken money you shouldn't have taken from anybody? And no one said yes.
OK, and is that good enough for you? You're taking them at face value?
And what do you think Keir Starmer's doing? And what do you think Campbell Badenoch's doing?
Okay, but this question is for you. Those are questions for them on a different
I am not a police officer. I cannot access emails or phone messages. I can't investigate other than asking people. And I would point out to you that this is an embarrassment for UKIP. It's a very minor embarrassment for Reform.
Well, he was party leader in Wales.
For how many weeks?
Well, you're still party leader. That's irrelevant.
For a very brief period of time. He's not been with us for a very, very long time.
Nigel Farage, leader of Reform UK, interviewed by Sky News on Tuesday. There's another BBC article. A Jewish former classmate of Nigel Farage has told BBC the Reform UK leader is being fundamentally dishonest by suggesting former pupils who say they witnessed his racism are not telling the truth. This is Washington Today, and back in Washington, D.C., The Hill writes that Democrat Afton Bain and Republican Matt Van Epps are polling neck and neck in a Tennessee special election to replace former Congressman Mark Green, Republican of Tennessee, according to a new poll. An Emerson College Polling the Hill survey released Wednesday shows Van Epps, former commissioner of the Tennessee Department of General Services, at close to 48%, and Bain, a state representative, at 46%. Among likely voters and voters who have already voted, close to 5% say they are undecided. That was from thehill.com. Early voting in this contest ended today. Election Day is next Tuesday, December 2nd. Matt Van Epps was on Fox News Tuesday night about why voters should support him, and also responding to some past comments about the police from his opponent, Afton Bain.
I'm a Christian, a husband, a father, an America First conservative, and a combat veteran. After West Point, I went on to fly helicopters in the Army, Apaches, and then Chinooks with the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment. After that, I was a small business leader in Nashville, served in Tennessee state government, most recently as the commissioner of the Tennessee Department of General Services. We've been endorsed by President Trump, and we have the real-world boots-on-the-ground leadership experience to push forward and win decisively on December 2nd to bring down the cost of living and advance America First, and that's what we're going to do.
What about safety? I mean, obviously, you seem like an individual who has taken the safety of Americans under his wing and decided that's important, thanks to your military service, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
When you hear your opponent there saying defund the police, I mean, what do the people of Nashville and the rest of the people in that district ultimately want?
It's unacceptable and disqualifying. Some of the first groups that we met with were sheriffs and chiefs across our 14 counties, and we asked what do they need, and that we will always back the blue. We met with that group again just a couple of weeks ago, and that's what we stand with law enforcement. My opponent harasses and bullies ICE and the Tennessee Highway Patrol as a sitting state legislator, which is unacceptable. We are just the opposite of that. We'll always fight for our military, our law enforcement, our military and veterans. That's what Tennessee needs and deserves, and that's what we'll do.
Matt Van Epps is the Republican nominee for Congress in Tennessee's 7th District. On Fox News Tuesday night ahead of next Tuesday's special election. Opponent Afton Bain was interviewed on Tuesday by the Hopium Chronicles podcast.
Let me ask you one last thing. Are you having fun?
No. No, I'm not. I'm really, but I am deeply inspired by the support from across the country and my constituents. And, our pollster said in the briefing about our poll said, your voters will walk across glass to vote for you. And that's because time and time again, I was arrested for protesting the corrupt Speaker of the House who received federal corruption charges. I was hauled out of the governor's office for protesting a child pedophile. When I showed up in our community, my Hispanic constituents asked me to show up to monitor their activity, and I did. And so time and time again, I've stood up for my community, and those folks have my back. And I've just been overwhelmed by the support. But it is not, as a young woman, the misogyny has been unbearable. And the attacks, obviously, the character assassination attacks are just, it is profound and a lot. I expected it, but I didn't know it'd feel this contested. But it's because they don't want to be talking about how they're going to make healthcare more affordable. And so when you really kind of scratch the surface, there's no remedy or solution besides scapegoating and fear. And I hope the Tennessee voters will realize that it's a tired tactic and they want change.
Afton Bain, the Democratic nominee for Congress in Tennessee's 7th District, on the Hopium Chronicles podcast on Tuesday, ahead of the December 2nd special election, which will be the last special election in Congress for the year. Again, from the Hill article on this contest, though the district is seen as a red stronghold, Democrats have been pouring money into the race and sending several high-profile surrogates there in hopes of an impressive overperformance following a string of resounding victories elsewhere. Thanks for listening to Washington Today. Sign up for C-SPAN's evening newsletter word for word and get the stories making headlines in Washington sent to your inbox. Subscribe at cspan.org/connect. Have a good night and Thanksgiving holiday. Washington Today will return on Monday.